The traditional playbook doesn't work for elite fitness like it does for other markets. You can't just buy your way in because people will recognize it.
Out of like the 50, 60 athletes that were competing at the CrossFit Games, like 40 plus were wearing tier. You can create this illusion of feeling everywhere at once because all the top athletes are wearing it.
You have to prioritize brand from the beginning so that you don't lose your potency.
Running and fitness is the new streetwear.
All right, so I got asked on a call yesterday how a brand can enter the category of elite fitness. And I think it's an important conversation because normally when brands enter a new market or a new category, the traditional playbook doesn't work for elite fitness like it does for other markets. So usually you're entering through large marketing budgets, relying on existing brand recognition and leveraging collaborations. But with elite fitness, you can't just buy your way in because people will recognize it. Like, you have to have deep industry knowledge and prove that you are of the same, you're cut from the same cloth that these people came from. And honestly, what I think, the product has to match, because in elite fitness, they're gonna know immediately if your product can't perform at the same caliber they can.
Fully agree. I mean, you even think about Nike and Converse back in the day. Like, Converse was the shoe for basketball, right? Until Nike came along, and even though like Nike started as a track or more of a running shoe, they were focused on performance from day one. And so the second that you took Michael Jordan, who was like the epitome of performance, and then you matched it with what was a revolutionary shoe even from a product standpoint, right? And from a performance standpoint, it made a world of a difference. Of course, like attaching it to Michael Jordan becoming who he was is an insane.
Right,
like
collaborations do matter. But you have to also pull from within the existing space in order to rock it. I think that's, the movie Air is just a perfect example.
Yes, I was about to ask, like, I'm guessing you had watched it, but
oh yeah,
in Air, like the guy who designed the shoe was this needs to be the best shoe. And that was one of the main things when they were pitching Michael Jordan on the shoe, outside of it being like, hey, you're gonna get your own shoes, the performance needs to be as good as you're going to play.
Because Nike wouldn't be Nike if the shoe didn't perform. They could have still signed Michael Jordan, but as soon as he was on the court and people started buying the shoe, if it didn't do what they claimed that it would do.
Who's like making a real hard push right now, it almost seems as if they're overtaking Nike, at least within the running space, is Adidas.
I know. Adidas has been crushing it. And it's on the back of their products. Like, they're coming out with revolutionary tech within their running shoes, which is difficult to do at this point. I thought everything was done until I saw that insane runner that they dropped. And you see all of the athletes running.
So they're dropping two runners. So they're dropping one runner that is it's basically like a carbon with no carbon. I don't know if you saw this. Yeah. And it like gives you all the same effects of a carbon, and then they just dropped the elite performance shoe, what's crazy to me about that is the fact that that shoe is reselling on the markets, like on StockX and GOAT and all of those different places, for like $2,000.
That's crazy.
It's almost like it's resurfacing online sneaker selling from like a reseller's perspective, which is crazy to think about in the running.
For a running shoe, not like a fashion shoe. That's
exactly
wild.
It's very interesting to think about, but it almost like makes me continue to think that running and fitness is the new streetwear.
Yeah.
And that's something we've talked about in the past, and like we've had conversations about, where running is becoming like the new fashion show for like streetwear and more so that side of apparel that like we haven't seen in a bit, where I mean, shoes are reselling. Like the Adidas, the black and white and the white and black, I forget the Evo SL, like same thing happened with those, where they sold out. And then we're reselling on the, like, I'm pretty sure I had to buy my Evo SLs off like StockX.
How much did you pay for those?
I think closer to 3, you know what I mean? Like not
300?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think,
okay.
I don't know if I didn't get the carbon ones, but like even then it was still like I was buying it off a reseller's market, which is crazy. And even like represents collaboration with Puma.
Yeah.
Like the black, I forget what they're called, but like the black something, like those were, you were only able to get them off of GOAT or StockX or like Grailed or whatever, one of those resellers' websites. But it is interesting to go back to your point where like there's a world where you look at something like High Rocks or you look at CrossFit and you look at how they're penetrating these markets, and it's like almost twofold. You have to have the best athletes, right? And the best athletes wearing your product because it's automatic social proof.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much validation to be like, oh, he's the top High Rocks athlete. I want to be like him, or I want to be able to perform like him. Therefore, I'm going to wear the same shoes. And then at the same time, one way to like, if you're just breaking into a market, one way to almost attach credibility to your brand, if you haven't made footwear or if you haven't been in the market, is to then partner with a Puma or to partner with an Adidas or a Nike to develop. Like Minta did the same thing with Saucony, right? Like Minta partnered with Saucony to create, I forget one of the endorphins.
Bandit did the same thing with Asics, which I think that's another point that I want to bring up is I think you have to prioritize an elite product alongside elite storytelling and aesthetic. And if you can't manufacture the elite product right out of the gate, I think not to bring up Bandit for the 12th time on this podcast, but Bandit is a great example in that they started with socks, and then as they dialed in their storytelling and their aesthetic on a lower budget. And then as they're scaling and they're getting more funding, you see storytelling scale at the same rate as their product quality. Yeah. And that is what, if you want to crack into an elite like fitness market specifically, you have to have both things grow at that same rate. And if you don't have the budget to do something like what a Tier Sport did with bringing an elite shoe to the CrossFit space, then you have to start smaller because you can't sacrifice on product or honestly aesthetic or storytelling.
Yeah, I really like what Tier did. So I'll preface with, I forget what CrossFit Games it was. It was the one where Lazar passed away.
Yes, that was in 23, I think, 24? 24. It was 24.
24. And it was the first time like I was working with Tier on something, and Matt DiLorenzo, the CEO of Tier, like pulls me aside. He's like, hey, like look at what we're developing. And he pulls me over and he gives me like their CX2, but it's a CX2 with a carbon plate in it, which is not something that's been created. I don't know if you ever used them. So they have the CX2. Yeah, the CX2. I think they're going to develop a CXT3 with it, but there's a carbon plate in it. The same.
I did not realize that.
Yeah. And so they did a ton of testing where they took it to, they partnered with LSU on like some of their lab testing and some of their athletic testing, and like the force production increased, their vertical jump increased, like all of these things that were tested shows that they're not just coming in being like, oh, like CrossFit is an opportunity for us because maybe there's no dominant player, right? Like now there's them in Rad really, right? There was Reebok, Nike with the Metcon, they kind of backed out. Reebok is never made a good looking shoe in their life. Like, and so they come in with the carbon, right? And this was going into, I think, end of 2024 when they released it. And it's like, okay, like you're coming into, well, two parts. The first part is out of like the 50, 60 athletes that were competing at the CrossFit Games, like 40 plus were wearing Tier.
Really?
Yeah. Right. And so you can look at it and be like, wow, the whole field, all the top athletes, all the top games athletes, if they're in the CrossFit Games, they're wearing Tier. And this is the idea of like blitzing. We're living in a completely different landscape and completely different products where if I'm selling like an $8 or a $12 teeth whitening kit, like I can just seed 100 people, 500 people, and you get all the validity of like somebody making a video of like, oh my gosh, like before and after, right?
And it's a volume game.
And it's a volume game. And all of a sudden you feel like you're everywhere at once, right? And people feel like you're everywhere at once. And like that feeling of everywhere at once all of a sudden makes you an authority figure within the space because there's so much social proof around the psychological factor that, oh, I feel like I see them everywhere, right? Now, in fitness, from a performance standpoint, it's a completely different game where you can create this illusion of feeling everywhere at once because all the top athletes are wearing it. There's a big difference between 40 people wearing it and 500 people making a UGC video. The chances are the 40 that are wearing it is going to be 10 times more impactful because those are the best people within the space that are wearing that shoe. And that's something that they've done to a T when they broke into the space. It was like, cool, we're going to get all the best athletes. They're all going to wear Tier And then we're going to start being at all these different events and competitions. And like, they also started partnering with, they work with so many local affiliates to the point where it's like, I forget.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's like thousands of different affiliates that are like quote unquote tier gyms.
Yeah.
That then, they all get discount codes to basically tier products. So on top of all the top athletes wearing them, let's say you go to a CrossFit gym for the first time and you see everyone wearing CXT3s, CXT2s, et cetera. All of a sudden there's more social proof. And then you see the athletes that are wearing them. And so there's this effect of like just absolutely blitzing the market, but blitzing it from a strategic standpoint where, again, the top people wear them and now it trickles down. And there's like this funnel effect created by the best people in the space wearing them. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying this episode, if you enjoyed the last 2 episodes, please subscribe. We're hitting all these expenses on our own to build this show and to rent all these damn cars and all that jazz. So if you enjoy it, please subscribe, because that's going to allow us to eventually get sponsors and pull this off for the long term.
I also think an important thing about them sponsoring affiliates, it shows that they understand the CrossFit space and how community driven it is, and how you can't pay attention to just the elite athletes at the CrossFit Games if you want to win over CrossFit. You have to be there inside affiliates, which I think is another great strategy that Matt had. Is he tapped Corey, who came from within the CrossFit space, and said, I want you as my director. And so if you're trying to break into a hyper specific niche, and CrossFit especially, like, they protect their own. Like, you're either in CrossFit or you're out. And if you're
that's to a fault, we're like,
definitely to a fault. It is definitely fully backfiring on them. But I mean, that's where, they were smart in that they're like, let's hire somebody from within the space who knows it like the back of their hand, because they've been swimming in these waters, and they're going to know those little nuances that somebody else who's entering, who might have like decades of experience in performance marketing, isn't going to have.
Yeah. I think that's always so key when we're talking about what is like somewhat niche communities.
Yeah.
Right. Where you have to, some of the people that are, and even with me, like them bringing me on, it's like, I know this space.
Yep.
Right. I know the space very, very well. I trained for CrossFit. I love the CrossFit Games. I like the sport. All of those things play into how I'm able to ideate and think about campaigns and think about influencer seeding and what I think is going to be hot in the market.
Tier has a budget, but they don't have Nike budgets. And the way that you can break through when you don't have a Nike budget is to know the small market gaps that are so hyper niche. You don't know it unless you're swimming in those waters. And here's the meme page everyone's following. Here's the things, the little ins and outs that you would never understand if you weren't living and breathing that space. I also think that's where, when it comes to storytelling and campaigns that you're launching, they've got the elite athletes, but you've done a good job at understanding what it's like to participate in the sport as somebody who trains at, an elite level, but isn't, gunning for the CrossFit Games because you're running a business. You do something completely different. And so you were able to bring that flavor of things when you work with them on large launch campaigns.
I think the other thing that they're doing well now is, right, you first penetrate the market, right? And you penetrate it and you're like, okay, we're going to own CrossFit. We're going to dominate CrossFit. Then we expand, right? So you almost gain the social proof and the validity by entering the market, being one of the top players in the market, and then you expand, right? I talk about this with Rogue Fitness as well. Like, Rogue Fitness came in, and I forget if it was like strongman or Olympic lifting, or if it might have been CrossFit. But long story short is like, they came into the market, they focused on one category, and then they expanded. And it's this idea of landing and expanding. Get very good at serving one customer base that's adjacent to other customer bases, right? Like that's adjacent to other different categories, because they have like all of this social proof and validity in CrossFit, they can now expand to more general fitness, or into High Rocks, or into, all the different kind of like fitness competitions that are starting to rise easier than another brand who hasn't spent the last 4 or 5 years like dominating a single category and now has to enter the market, right? Like, they're playing a bigger and better game because they're able to do so. And that's something that I think about as well. It's like, you can't make at the beginning, you can't make a product for everyone, and you shouldn't make a product for everyone.
No.
They didn't make a product for everyone. They weren't, and even like, right, a year and a half ago, High Rocks started becoming hot. They weren't like
immediately pivoting to High Rocks because they wanted to, again, fully dominate CrossFit. We've talked about that within other industries like CPG. We're going to launch, you want to launch with a hero product for a very specific market. Because if you look at like, oh, we're eyeing Symbiotica and what they're doing, if you immediately out the gate try to be Symbiotica, you're going to lose, even if you have maybe the best investment and backers, because you want to come in with a hyper-specific product for a hyper-specific person and establish this is who we are in our personality. And then you can steadily release off the back of that. I also think if you launch with too many, products or too many different messages for different audiences right out of the gate, then you're missing out on the feedback from your people that you could be getting when you launch something super specific and dialed.
Yeah. And I think your storytelling has to change and adapt that, as you do as well. And so one thing that I know for certain, because I've worked on the campaigns, is like the campaigns have become a little bit more generalized, right? From the standpoint of, okay, if the campaigns in the past really focused on winning the CrossFit Games or being a podium athlete, we've like pulled back, or like, we like almost like peeled it back to now just be more inspirational for the person who aspires to maybe move like an athlete, be an athlete in their own right. So, when we were working on the CXT3 campaign, the idea was to leverage the athletes in a way where we all know that they're a top figure within the space, but let's not tell the story from that perspective. Let's tell the story from the perspective of them trying to train to become, I hate to say like best version of themselves, but essentially that.
Yeah.
Right? Like this better version of themselves, like they're still hungry. They haven't accomplished the things that they want to accomplish. They have these goals and aspirations. Therefore, can we show that side of them? Can we put them in a house that isn't a very nice house? Can we put them in a grungy garage? Can we put them in these settings where they feel isolated and alone? And not that we're trying, like, that isn't a campaign that's like directly targeted towards mass America from the standpoint of, hey, like, go and work out. It's more so it's more generalized from the CrossFit podium perspective, but it's still staying true to who Tier is, right? Like their slogan of always in front. We have to make sure that we're targeting and talking to the individual that wants to be always in front. That doesn't just mean like, hey, you're winning the CrossFit Games. That doesn't mean you're winning a marathon. It just means, am I pursuing excellence?
Yes.
Right? Am I that individual that pursues excellence? And so therefore, with how we're even thinking about storytelling, or how we thought about storytelling when we were working on the campaign, it is through that lens of like, are we showing the person that's pursuing excellence and then leveraging obviously the athletes' names and their personalities and who they are within that campaign to be able to tell that story to someone who's trying to accomplish that.
Yeah.
I was just saying, and that allows a story to go beyond just CrossFit, and now is able to talk to the High Rocks athlete without even having to like talk to the High Rocks athlete, or to the person that's working out at Lifetime, without having to just say like, hey, like, or like be very specific with our messaging. So
because what you're not doing is diluting the brand voice. That's why I am so bullish on when I work with at my studio like a lot of startups, and I stress so much, we have to get the personality, the tone of voice, and the brand dialed from the beginning. And the reason you want to do that, you can be so potent and surgical when you go after your initial market, but then it becomes infinitely easier. I think sometimes you see a lot of brands miss when they try to go general. All of a sudden, their message is completely diluted. And so you lose all of the sauce that made people fall in love with the brand initially. But if you have that framework, my friend Jason, he's an art director, and he talks about you want to create kind of this rubber band effect. So you find two different sources of inspiration that feel dichotomous, and you pull that rubber band and you stretch it as far as it can go. And that gives you a sandbox to play in. So now, if Tier is going after running, high rocks, things that are not, CrossFit specifically, they've got that kind of framework that they can play within and immediately pivot and say, we're going to take this and apply it to a new market. And I think granted, I'm biased because I'm coming from the brand side, but I've seen so many businesses fail in that specific aspect. You have to prioritize brand from the beginning so that you don't lose your potency.
Well, imagine I'm a startup. Imagine I'm trying to develop my brand's voice and who I'm targeting. How would you do it? What exercise would you put me through?
There's a couple different exercises. I think initially when people are developing their tone of voice, they initially just think about mission, vision, values, or, specific sliders. Hey, we're playful. Hey, we're serious. What I think the best brands do when it comes to developing a tone of voice is you have to pull from dichotomous personality traits. I think the brands that are the stickiest, because we as humans carry conflicting personality traits, right? Like I might be the most, driven, hardworking individual, and I love rotting on my couch on weekends. And that feels, like two things that shouldn't line up. So when you see a brand that's playing in those circles, so, one thing we like to do is force brands into binary decisions and say, what are the things that feel opposite that we can bring together? And the harder opposing the forces are, the more tension you're going to build and the more interesting your tone of voice can be. And so typically what we do there, I give the example of two examples. Equinox is one of them. Love them or hate them. They have this idea of luxury and sensuality and experience. It's all very visceral, and they're disciplined and precise. And so the ideal client or market for Equinox is somebody who can relate to that. They experience both things. I also think Rad Global has such a strong brand tone of voice and personality because they're coming in and saying, hey, we make an elite product, yet our marketing is very unserious and playful and funny, which a lot of athletes can relate to. They say, yeah, that's me. I'm elite, but I'm also not serious all the time. That's not going to be everyone, but it is going to be some people. And that also, once you define what those, for tone of voice, those two dichotomous traits are, or multiple typically, you can also borrow from that for visuals. That'll tell you what the visual language should be. If we know we're a Rad Global, we fall heavy in the chaotic good camp, we're elite, but we're playful, all of a sudden, world's our oyster to go out and create campaigns that feel completely unhinged, but in a very positive and uplifting way. Whereas Tier understands we're more elite, we're also serious, and we're for performing your best. And so that's where you can have fun and saying we're going to tap into these campaigns where we're showing people working hard at every level.
Explain the chaotic good, etc. That's a good chart that you and I did a podcast, I don't know, probably a year ago.
It's been about a year ago now.
Yeah.
And we did this with your studio brand too. It's a cheesy tool, but it's really useful. So the moral alignment chart, if you look it up, is from Dungeons and Dragons. So Dungeons and Dragons, as nerdy as it is a game where you define, hey, we're making up a character, and people need to define what is my character's personality and moral compass. So we know how they're going to make decisions throughout the game of Dungeons and Dragons, which is kind of perfect for brands that want to navigate the world of marketing. How do we decide? This is a question, all these founders ask, how do we decide what social media trends we should participate in? How far do we go with campaigns? How can we make sure that we push the envelope without losing our brand voice? And so what we like to say is, okay, it's very tongue-in-cheek, but there's this chart where you have a chaotic side, a good side, and then also a neutral side, and lawful and evil. So Rad, for example, would fall heavy in the chaotic good. I think chaotic good, you'll also see gooder sunglasses. We're for the good of you. It's rally against destruction, but it's chaos. We're move fast and break things, but break things for the good. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if we're looking at chaotic evil, that's the classic liquid death and pit viper sunglasses. The marketing is unhinged. You have, people flipping off the camera. They're retargeting ads, say things like, hey, we're outside your house, buy a pair of sunglasses right now. And people love that shit. It's perfect. Whereas I think, if we look at the lawful evil, I would put CrossFit in lawful evil. Their campaign that they came out with that says, no excuses. It's, only the hard work. Like, it's very much, to their own code of the law, but it's, we don't care about you. This is how it is. And I think you can have a lot of fun in the lawful evil camp. Within the neutrals, I always give the example of chaotic neutral would be like a Duolingo, or even like a CPG brands like Alani Nu.
Yeah.
Like, you'll see a lot of their stuff dominated with like whatever collaboration they're doing. It's pure chaos. It's fun.
Yeah.
You can kind of play in that realm with CPG really easily because you don't have to have such a specific voice. Whereas in like maybe a lawful good, I would throw like AG1. AG1 has to be lawful good because they're fighting for their lives, saying that it's scientifically backed.
Yeah.
And so if you were selling something like a mental health product or, a supplement like Symbiotica is lawful good. And so that can be a great cheat sheet to kind of show you like, okay, here's how we can establish a tone of voice and kind of move throughout the landscape and be dynamic, because the algorithm's going to change. The markets you're going to enter are going to change, but your brand voice should stay potent. So that allows you to have some room and freedom to play.
Spot on. It's so interesting to hear like that side of it, because I'm so focused on the content side versus like, okay, let's develop the personality. Let's develop
like let's build this from day one. Like my job at my studio is like, let's set this up now so that when we pass things off to you, you can just take it and cook.
You know what's set to build,
exactly
what actors to hire, what story to tell, all of those elements.
100%.
I'll then shoot it from my side where, okay, if I'm trying to break into a market, into a completely different category, in today's landscape, how am I going to do that via content?
Yeah.
The way I think about it now versus then is chances, or the majority of brands would have a main account, right? They're all going to have a main account where if you're trying to break into a category, you would just launch as if, like you were just putting new content into that account. That way is that, like, legitimately, if you want to be successful into 26, 27, 28, the way these algorithms work are, it is so interest-based. I can make a piece of content tomorrow about running as someone who's never made running content and get in front of runners. I can make a piece of content about New York, and the different places to eat in New York, and it will get in front of the people that are interested in places to eat in New York, right? Knowing that, it doesn't mean don't use your main account. It means think about your main account as an amplifier to the people that already love you, follow you, and you can for sure get in front of. But if I am whatever brand and I am trying to break into a specific category that's different than the categories that I already exist in, I'm starting a fresh new account with an account dedicated to whatever that category is, okay? An example would be, I'm gonna start a completely different account for my on the personal side, that's just gonna be about like content yapping, purely about content marketing, just yapping. And
that's so smart.
Because I want to dedicate it to the people that just want to hear me talk about content, right? And it's an easy enough format for me to just, like, you follow that specifically to know or to hear me just talk about content. Maybe you don't want to see the family stuff. You don't want to see the branding stuff. You don't want to see the world building, whatever. You just want to know, how do I get a video from 10,000 views to 100,000 views? Cool, we can do that. So that's that part of it. Now, as a brand, start that category, start a different account within that category. Now, the best way for you to then grow it is you have to think through the lens of episodic content, right? You have to, and you also have to know what type of archetype do you want to be within this category. If I'm Martin, I'm like, okay, I'm starting a completely different account that is going to be like just an educational account.
That's so
because we have the best products within the space. And we have the most science behind our products. We have all of these fueling guides. We have all of this knowledge out there. Yet our Instagram is kind of just like about,
here's a new product launch. Here's an athlete that we're partnering with.
Versus, like, unless you're an elite level endurance athlete, you don't know that they're probably the best gel that you can buy on the market. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But And so for the people that are just breaking into the market, and you see the category expansion right now within the endurance space.
Oh my God, yeah.
You should have that dedicated account that's nothing but educational content with one central character and maybe a few central characters that you're publishing probably 3 to 4 pieces of content every single week. That's almost like, whether it's like a scientific character, whether it's a runner or an endurance athlete, having like a dedicated show on that account or a dedicated series on that account. Like, you have to think through this lens where, okay, how do I speak to the elite level athlete, but at the same time, talk to all the people that are starting to break into the space, that want to break into the space. And that is going to give you the ability to do that. If you're doing it from a completely different account where I'm a runner, this page is my resource, there I'm going to follow this page. And also knowing that when you become the resource of information for somebody, you inherently build so much trust.
Yeah, you're unstoppable.
Unstoppable. And so from a go-to-market perspective, that's how I would approach it. And then obviously you could start bringing in different elite level athletes. Not everybody can do that out the gate. So I'm not even trying to go there at the beginning, but getting ultra specific with who you're trying to talk to with a dedicated account will move mountains.
That's solid gold advice.
Yeah, I don't know what to say after that. Mic drop.
I think that's it.
That's the episode.
Well, you know who I think we should talk to next?
I could take a wild guess. I could hit him up. Are you thinking Matt?
It's got to be Matt from Cheer. Matt and Corey.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to LA.
Yeah.
In a few months.
Yeah.
Or in a month or so. I'll hit him up. We'll get a call on the books and see if he's down to take a ride.